Our Creator commanded us to let the land rest every 7 years. In Exodus 23 we read, "In 6 years you shall sow your land, and you shall gather in the fruits thereof, but the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie still, that the poor of your people may eat, and what they leave the beasts of the field shall eat. In like manner you shall deal with your vineyard and with your olive garden." Why did our Creator command us to practice this? Is it just to let the ground replenish itself? Therefore, we do not have to practice it today because we can add fertilizer and keep on planting every year? I have been broadcasting that His commandments are in place to teach us His holy and perfect character. Part of attaining His character is relying on Him as the source for everything, learning to trust Him for everything and only trust in Him. Can you imagine a nation of people today who trust and obey Him and live by every word that He gave them to live by? And because of this, He blesses the fruit of their labor so much for 6 years that they can store up enough to take the 7th year off. This nation of obedient people would never be without anything. What an example they would be to the rest of the world, and what an example they would be for their children to follow. Who wouldn't want that? This instruction was given to us because our lives are supposed to be built around trusting Him. If we live this commandment, we would know that He is our source for everything. Therefore, needing Him would be a way of life. This commandment or statute is not a suggestion, nor are any of His commandments or statutes. Another dimension of His character that this 7-year cycle was to teach us is forgiveness. In Deuteronomy 15 we read, "At the end of every 7 years you shall make a release, and this is the manner of the release. Every creditor that lends anything unto his neighbor shall release it. He shall not exact it of his neighbor or of his brother, because it is called Yahweh's release. Of a foreigner you may exact it again, but that which is yours with your brother or your hand shall release it." We read elsewhere that we're to not even charge interest to our brother, but lend freely to him whatever he needs. Can you imagine such a nation? A nation living off of depending on His blessings? Living this would teach us to not have greed, realizing that it all belongs to Him anyway. Doing so would teach us to have perfect hearts, hearts that realize our abundance is being given to us because He loves us, and we love Him, and we love one another. Does this statute of sowing and reaping only apply to the farmer? Today's culture is not an agrarian society like it was back then. No, it applies to all who are His, because it is a Sabbath year, just as we have weekly Sabbaths that we are commanded to observe. We read this in Leviticus 25. "And Yahweh spoke unto Moses, to Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Speaking of the children of Israel, and say unto them, When you come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto Yahweh. 6 years you shall sow your field, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard, and gather the fruit thereof. But in the 7th year shall be a Sabbath of rest unto the land, a Sabbath for Yahweh. You shall neither sow your field nor prune your vineyard." We see here that this 7th year is a Sabbath. It is a non-work year, a year of rest. One of the purposes of the 7-day weekly Sabbath is to give us rest, a reward for our 6 days of labor. And another purpose is to point us to the 7th 1,000-year phase of His design to build a family. The 7th year of rest includes the same purposes, but both are in place to teach us much more as well. He continues in verse 5, "That which grows of its own of your harvest you shall not reap, neither gather the grapes of your vineyard undressed, for it is a year of rest unto the land. And the Sabbath of the land shall be meat for you, and for your servant, and for your maidservant, and for your hired servant, and for your stranger that sojourns for you." The Sabbath, that's what the Sabbaths are in place for, is to teach us. They're to be our food and our source. And there's so much instruction given them, and just given in the keeping of them. "And for your cattle, and for the beasts that are in your land, shall all the increase thereof be meat." This 7th year is a token of the reward that we have in store for us if we hearken unto Him and become His. These statutes are not suggestions, as I said. They are instructions to teach us His character and show us how He wants to bless us if He is our source. They are to be a way of life. Would this type of life work in today's fast-paced society? Imagine a nation walking in His statutes and receiving His blessings as a witness to the other nations. Just maybe all nations would want a piece of that pie. With today's telecommunications, the whole world would marvel at seeing what walking in the statutes of the Most High produces. No evil allowed, no starvation, no theft, no rape, no murder, no killing of babies, just perfect outgoing love being administered to all, including the sojourner in this land. No worries about the provision for the next day, less more the 7th year. The only worry or fear would be to fear not walking in his statutes and losing out on his promises. Is not this what Yeshua said, that we ought not to fear anything except fearing the one who can take away eternal life, fearing to be out of his favor and not having the blessings of his protection and the blessings of his abundant provision? Instead, man has chosen to ignore this commandment and most all of the rest of them as well, and take the matter into their own hands. They have chosen to live to make sure that they have their own resources to cover their needs and for food and shelter and protection. Oh, how they've missed out. The next verse goes on to discuss the 50th year, which is the year of Jubilee. And you shall number 7 Sabbaths of years unto you, 7 times 7 years, and the space of 7 Sabbaths of years shall be unto you, 49 years. And you shall cause the trumpet of Jubilee to sound in the 10th day of the 7th month, in the day of atonement. You shall make the trumpet sound throughout your land. And you shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all of the land, and all the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and you shall return every man into his possession, and you shall return every man into his family. A jubilee shall that 50th year be unto you, and you shall not sow, neither reap that which grows of itself, nor gather the grapes in your vine left undressed. For it is the jubilee, and it shall be unto you holy, and you shall eat the increase of the land out of the field. He is to be our increase. He will provide and protect. Our role is to trust and obey him. The cost? Simply trusting and obeying him, learning his perfect character. The temporary reward? All of our needs are met, and we have his mighty protection, and we learn to be perfect, converted in his image. The permanent reward? We become at one with him in his family and become eternal, and we are given the keys to the heavens and a pure relationship with him and the rest of his family. Instead, Israel has chosen to go their own way and make for themselves gods and mock the true Elohim and his instructions with their perversions of the truth. In Jeremiah 16, shall a man make gods unto himself that are not gods? Therefore, behold, I will this once cause them to know. I will cause them to know my hand and my might, that they shall know that my name is Yahweh. The sin of Judah is written with a pen of iron and with the point of a diamond. It is graven upon the table of their heart, upon the horns of their altars. They're a stiff-necked people. They're right in their own eyes. The children remember their altars and their groves by the green trees and upon the high hills. They've taught their children lies, and it has been passed down, and their children have remained in captivity because they've believed the lies. O my mountain in the field, I will give your substance and all your treasures to the spoil, and your high places for sin, and throughout all of your borders. And you, even yourself, shall discontinue from your heritage that I gave you, and I will cause you to be taken captive by your enemies in the land which you know not. And for you have kindled a fire in my anger, and you shall be burnt up. Thus says Yahweh, cursed be the man that trusts in man, and makes flesh his arm, and whose heart departs from Yahweh, who departs from his statutes, and trusting in themselves. Nothing has changed. Judah and the rest of the tribes of Israel rejected his covenant over and over again, and they were scattered and sent into captivity. Originally, the 10 tribes were sent, and Judah's been sent in captivity since then because they changed the calendar that Yahweh gave them to keep track of the appointed times with. They are still scattered in bondage today. They are in bondage to false religions that are a result of the captivity because they rejected his protection and by rejecting his statutes and his commands. The 7th year cycle that he gave us to live by was designed to teach us who he wants to be to us, as well as to fashion his character in us. As far as what year we're in within the 50-year cycle, I believe that we're about ready to enter into the 11th month of the 20th year, making the following year a Sabbath year or a release year. The next year begins on approximately April 5th, depending on the new moon sighting. I am confident that one of the only things that those who call themselves the Jewish people today have correct is what year we are in, and that is the year 5770. So next year will be the year 5771. As I have said in some past segments, it is not about prophesying dates. It never has been. It is about obedience to the instructions and trusting in him as our sole source for all things, including him being our sole source for understanding right from wrong. That being said, even though it is not about dates, I do believe that Yeshua will return on the Feast of First Fruits in 2012. I know that we I know that we will not make it to another Jubilee year because he is going to cut short the days, just as Yeshua said he would, for the elect's sake. The lunar cycles that we have to teach us when his appointed times are return to a starting position each 19 years. 2012 will be the year 5772 on our Creator's calendar. This is exactly 12 19-year time cycles short of the 6,000 years that he gave to man. One for each, one time cycle for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. Our Creator knows the hearts of his chosen, how they long for the days to be cut short because they do not want this world anymore. It is a cesspool of filth that opposes their Father. And man's pace to destroy himself is another reason that the days must be cut short, or no man would survive. The 6,000 years allowed for man will therefore be cut short. Man was given 1,656 years before Elohim destroyed what opposed him in the flood. 2,460 years later, the Jewish people replaced his calendar system that he gave them to calculate his appointed times. This happened in the year 4116, which was 356 AD on the Roman calendar. And I understand that most historical records say this happened in 358, but this is not what I believe that I've been given to be true. I believe it's the year 356. And 1,656 years later, we'll have the year 5772. There is evidence pointing to this date from the prophecies of Daniel regarding the 1260 and the 1290 and the 1335 years that I will not get into at this time because, like I said, it's not about dates anyway. Even if a man was to walk out of the tomb, which happened just about 1981 years ago, most did not listen to him and still rejected what he spoke. So it's certainly not about dates if they won't even believe the Messiah himself. Instead, man chooses to believe lies of men who told of a man who told you that the law was not required and all the false teachings that come out from that. Yeshua will say to you on that day, "Depart from me, all of you whose works are apart from my Father's law. I never knew you." This coming year, I don't think that you're going to need to have to worry about setting aside the 7th year from your work anyway, because I do not think that there will be that much work being done. The world will be thrown into a state of chaos and destruction. Man will find out that they should have put their trust in their Creator instead of their own arm or in the arm of their governments or their doctors or their bank accounts or whatever it is that they put their trust in. This includes putting your trust in a made-up God and a man-made religion that rejects the truth. The good news, it's not too late to repent because he is going to call a people who will turn to him in truth, and he will deliver you through the coming hardship and into the promised land of a new era of time. As I have said in other segments, there is a desert that will need to be crossed before you can enter into that era, because he will have to try you and prove you and make sure that you really want him. If your mind is truly set on his kingdom and you're fighting for it with all of your being, he will deliver you out of the affliction. The coming affliction is necessary because of our stubbornness. There is no other way. We will need to embrace it and not curse him for it, because we are the ones who caused it by rejecting what he had to offer. He could destroy everything with one foul swoop, but he is not finished building his family yet. Only the first fruits. The millennium is going to be an incredible era of time to live in, because all who live into it are going to see how his perfect design works to teach us love. They will be given opportunity to see the beauty of being made complete in complete agreement with what is true and holy. I hope that each of you will choose to flee Babylon and fight to live into the promised land and make straight your paths for the Messiah's soon return.